the incident happened September 28th, 1993, and this really is a crazy story. There was a robbery at a Chevron gas station, and during the robbery, a young woman named Brenda Whitfield was shot and killed. And there is surveillance footage, and there's these descriptions of who this suspect is. You fit none of the descriptions. I believe at the point they were saying it was like a short, brown to dark skinned dude, and at this point you are a tall, lean young man. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
And so where it gets really bizarre is they have this surveillance footage, and a person who says, "Oh, Edwin Chandler was my neighbor. I think that's the guy." But come to find out, y'all were never neighbors at all. At one point,
never. Never.
When he lived in the apartment complex, you didn't live there. It's disturbing.
He lived there like a year or so before I had ever moved out there.
Right. So you weren't even neighbors, but how did your name? Oh, and the reason why your name got in it is because you, I guess earlier before, you had a warrant out for your arrest for not showing up to a court date because of bad checks. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Right. All right. So yeah, there's warrant out for your arrest. You're on a work release program. You didn't show up to a court date. And because of that photographic lineup, that person who y'all weren't neighbors said, "Oh, I think that's the guy." And then if I have this right, they go to your sister's house, and don't they threaten to take away her kids if they don't say it was you? Is all this accurate?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So tell me how your sister reacts. I believe they approach her October 3rd. They're grilling her. How is your sister dealing with the pressure from the police department, from the investigators?
Well, she dealt with the pressure in a great way, I think. I think that the police just took her words and tried to use them against her. She told them that blood was thicker than water and that she was not gonna, lie and say that I did this, knowing, that that's my sibling. She would never do anything like that, knowing the truth of the fact, And so the police in Louisville at that time were definitely involved in illegal activities. The way that they handled the cases, from the way that they handled the cases down to actually handling the actual people involved in the cases, the witnesses and things. And my sister was a part of that. She fell victim to that as well.
And I want to get into this guy, Mark Handy, a little bit later, but this is the guy who pled guilty to framing people. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. All right. So your sister's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I believe she said that he was even having dinner with his girlfriend. Is that accurate? You had a solid alibi.
Yes, that's correct. Yes,
right.
Absolutely. Everyone in that neighborhood that was around that night knew who I was, and they knew where I was.
All right. So again, the way your name is caught up is because this random person says, "Oh, my neighbor," who wasn't my neighbor. I believe he did it because I saw some photographic lineup. But tell me about when the detectives then turn, I don't know how to say her first name, Viasha Burley. Is that her first?
Yes.
Is that her name?
Yes.
So this is when this is when it really gets effed up. So tell me what happens when they get a hold of Viasha Burley, who I believe was a drug addict.
Yes, absolutely. There, excuse me. There were a couple of my neighbors definitely were drug addicts. And it was something that me being as young as I wasn't, I guess, understanding of that element yet, in life. And from what I know now, a lot of the things that went on in this case, I didn't know about a lot of the stuff until later on after the fact, and that really goes to a testament of my true innocence and all of this. I just didn't know a whole bunch of stuff that went on. Like you talked about the neighbor who said that he voiced my name in the situation. Well, I didn't even know that until just honestly just a few months ago when we was going through the trial of Percy Phillips. So a lot of the stuff that has come out, has been shocking and surprising to me. Definitely the evening that it all happened, I was at Shay's apartment with my girlfriend at the time, and we were watching a movie, and I was babysitting her kids while she, had fun at a party that my very next door neighbor was throwing. There were a lot of people at the party. They were playing cards, drinking, smoking weed, and me and my girlfriend just went up to Shay's house so she could come down and enjoy that with them. And we went up there and watched her kids for her. And she wound up, her and another neighbor of mine wound up taking money from the police from something called, I think it was called Louisville's Most Wanted. And where the
it
police,
was the reward, quote unquote.
Yes, the police offered them a reward to testify.
And her story changes.
Yes, story changed 1,000 times, and so they finally got the real story out of her in court. And even though they brought that to light, it didn't have a lot of effect, I don't think, on the outcome of the jury for real, because they still convicted.
And you are arrested October 14th, 1993, a couple of weeks after the murder. You're 21 years old. Tell me what happens. What's your reaction when you finally understand your name is put in this and you are arrested?
Shock and dismay, definitely frightened and scared. I think all of the senses that would, come into play in one's, individual humanity at that, in a moment like that would come to play. Everything that you could think of, I felt, anger, not understanding what has happened. I think my biggest thing was when I was in the interrogation with Detective Handy, I felt like he was definitely becoming violent. And for me, I just wanted to end the process where I was at with him. I didn't want to talk to him anymore. And as a young man at that time, I didn't know that I could just stop that interview. I didn't know that I could just say, hey, I'm done and I quit and I don't want to talk to you anymore. I didn't know that. But even still, I felt like if I had have done that, it would have still went bad because he was becoming violent, at the time. And, he definitely told me that he had police outside of my house waiting to walk in and arrest my sister and take her kids away if I didn't tell him what he wanted to hear on the tape. And so, in my mind, I just thought in that moment, like, I can tell you anything you want to hear. It's not going to change the fact that the truth remains that I wasn't there and I didn't do anything, And I just felt like, I think in that moment that if I tell him whatever it is he wants to hear, then the evidence is going to prove that I wasn't there. They'll see whatever video that they got, whatever evidence that they have, it'll prove that I wasn't there because I know I wasn't there. And so I told him, okay, I'm going to say whatever you want me to say. And he recanted some things about a hat that was involved in the crime that the guy wore. And it was just a simple fact that when I went back to recant over the tape statement, I couldn't remember what hat he told me. I was lost. And so I had to start improvising, and that's what I did over the tape. I improvised, through the rest of the tape. And
and
to
Mr.
this
Chandler,
day, yes.
Mr. Chandler, I want to add a couple quick things here because this is really important. What's crazy is that the police lied to you and said your fingerprints have been found on the scene at the scene. Lie.
Yes.
They lied to you and told you that you failed a lie detector test.
Yes, but I didn't.
Lie. You
Yes,
did it. Stone cold lie. They told you that neighbors had identified sunglasses and a stocking cap that was his, and they lie.
lie.
And
Yes,
I really want people to understand this when you're watching those true crime documentaries, blah, 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 blah.
yeah,
That false confession, you were pressured and pressured. You're 21 years old. They're threatening your sister. You don't know what to do. You don't know why you're involved in this. And like any human being, you're going to do whatever you can do to get out of the situation.
yes,
And this
absolutely.
happens over and it happened to the Exonerated Five. That's such
It
an
happens
important
almost
point.
on a daily basis with the what I have over the course of 30 years. It's taken 30 years for me to gain a lot of understanding from this. We don't know. What you don't know, you don't know. And that rings true in a lot of people's lives. What you don't know, you don't know. And when you don't know, it can hurt you. And understanding that part, it's taken a lot for me to look back over my life and understand what's happened. Like the system failed me. The police department failed me. In some regards, I feel like my own family and friends failed me, because I was left out to hang and dry by myself when I shouldn't have. So that is the reason, that's the fuel and the passion that I have today. That's why I started the Chandler Project, understanding how difficult life can be sometimes. We won't, in certain situations, I guess when we're living life, we want help and we want people to be there for us. And sometimes it's just not the case. Sometimes you just have to kind of like man up or woman up, and you have to go through your situation by yourself on your own. And those are the times where God is most close to you, and you have to pay attention. Those are the times that God will direct you in your life and where you need to be at and what you need to be doing.
So I want to say that you are convicted February 10th, 1995. So much for a speedy trial. Took about a year and a half for you even to go to trial. You
Right.
obviously, like you broke down, you broke it down to us. You recanted this confession. So for folks who may not, I'm sure it's hard for even you to explain, but how did they manage to convict you with no physical evidence, with the quote unquote witness who said that, not witness, but the person who said that you said, oh, he wasn't at my house. No, he was at my house. And then the surveillance footage, the actual surveillance footage, do I have this right? It was taped over with an episode of Late Night with David Letterman.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct.
So how?
It was bad police work. It was bad police work that fueled this. And then, okay, the police can only do so much in a situation. There are other systematic mechanisms that come into play, okay, when you're dealing with a criminal case. Excuse me, and part of that being is the prosecutor. So the prosecutor takes the information that they get from the police and they move forward in the case based on the information that they get from the police. The police gave the prosecution in this case tainted information, bad information, all the way through it. And the prosecutor did his job and he ran with that. And he built a case around me that put me in the position that I was the murderer, knowing good and well that I wasn't, knowing the information that they had obtained did not put me there at the scene of the crime, any of that. And this is the systematic flaw that we deal with. This is the hurtful and the harmful part that me as a true American, that I have to suffer from, and I shouldn't. And I've put this on a lot of different levels. What happened to me was not a racist act, but if you look at the numbers and put me in the numbers along with being exonerated, it really shows that it's a racist system towards Black people
Mm.
in the way that they police us and the way that they investigate us, you know. And you got to understand that all police are not bad.
Mm-hmm.
I don't go off and make a tirade. I've never had bad mouth the police. That's not what this is about. This is about a systematic problem that exists in our country that we know about, that we really don't want to talk about. The hard things that go on in this country, we don't want to have these discussions. And I thank you today for bringing me on so that we can have this difficult discussion. This has plagued my life for 30 years. Just recently, please understand this, just recently, I've just been able to sit down and have clear, focused conversations like this without breaking down and crying because of the pain that I've suffered for so long. Almost 30 years to the day, you know, that I've been dealing with this. And so it's difficult, you know, trying to maneuver, trying to work your way through life, trying to build a family, trying to build a reputation. That's something that I didn't think that I would ever be able to get over. Being a murderer, once they label you a murderer in this lifetime, that's the worst crime that this earth knows. There's not another crime worse than a murder. There's not. And so when you're labeled a murderer, how can you get back from that? How do you gain, you know, respect back in your community or wherever, you know, that people look at you in that light that you're a murderer? Even though I've been on different shows now, I've told my story in a lot of different lights, but what I truly understand and what I really want people to understand is that even though my life has changed and that I've been exonerated and that I've been compensated and all of that, there are still people who believe that I'm a murderer. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, you know, but there definitely are people who still believe that I'm a murderer. There's definitely people who are not happy for me being exonerated. There are a lot of people who are still not in the understanding light that people like me exist, you know. So understanding those things, that's what gives me the fuel for what I do now.
You were convicted and your original sentence was 30 years. At this point, you'd already been behind bars for a year and a half. But tell me, how are you surviving in prison? You're a young man. How are you surviving the day by day? How are you getting by?
God, honestly, God helped me through my whole prison experience because my mother was a God-fearing woman, and she instilled that in me, you know. And I think going through that situation, that was the only thing that I had to lean on. I didn't have anything else. I didn't have anything else. I didn't have family members to lean on really. I had a few, but few far and in between, you know. And I didn't have a support system for real going through that, you know. But it was God that helped me through all of those days, you know. God didn't let me give up on myself. I was in a situation to where I was forced to either sink or swim. You know, being in prison, that's the situation that you're faced with. You're either going to sink or you're going to swim in prison. And I didn't want to sink. You know, I didn't want to die. You know, I didn't want to be there, but at the same time, I had to because that's what I was faced with. And so I just asked God daily, you know, renew me daily, you know, give me new strength daily so I can make it through this day and I can make it through the next one.
So
That's
you're
what
paroled
parole
in
is.
2002. So how are you finally exonerated in 2009?
Oh, before I made parole, there was a flyer that circulated the prison that I was at, and it was about the Innocence Project. And A guy that I knew there told me one day, like, hey man, this is definitely something that you need to invest your time in and think about and sit down and go over. He said, if I can help you out with it, I will, but this is something that you, out of all the people in here, you definitely need to, be checking into this. And so, I sat back in my cell, a few nights and I thought about it and realized I really didn't have anything to lose. And so I filled out the application for the Innocence Project to come and help me. And I wound up making parole, before their process really got going good. And once I made parole, they sought me out at home in Louisville, Kentucky, and asked me, point blank, hey, do you want us to continue working on your case? We understand that you're out now and, you can move on with your life if you choose so. But, if you want to, we'll still work on your case. And I was like, at that time, I was already out of prison, so, I really didn't have anything to lose at that time, so I asked them to go ahead and continue to work on it. And they did, they worked vigorously on my case,
Another element is that the corrupt detective who basically framed you, Mark Handy, he pleads guilty to framing people. And
Yes,
he is sentenced to a year in prison in 2021.
yes,
He's released after 2 weeks.
yes.
Uh, I just couldn't believe when I read that. What were your thoughts when you heard that Mark Handy, who's framed other people as well, and reportedly some of his victims are still behind bars,
Mhm.
when you heard he was released after 2 weeks, what did you think?
Oh man, it's difficult, I mean, because I went through all of this, and so knowing the fact in the beginning, my story never has changed. Knowing the fact that I told these people that this man procured this information from me, and lied, in numerous ways. When it all came out that I was telling the truth, even in that regard, you know, uh, I don't know, what do you do, in a situation like that? I mean, there's really nothing that I can do, you know. I can have all of the wide range of emotions that you could possibly have, but it's difficult for me to get geared up like that anymore. It's been too long. I've been dealing with this way too long. I got a family now, you know. I have a wife and kids now. And I have PTSD. I have a very mild case of PTSD. And so when I'm upset, sometimes it comes out. And it doesn't do me any good today to continuously to have to deal with that. Those wide range and pitches of emotions, I'm tired, you know. And so it hurts, you know. It has never not hurt. It hurts tremendously, but um, what are you going to do? This is the system that we have. This is the system that I know that this system works. It works on a daily basis. But in this situation, for me, it just did not work. It didn't work, almost on every phase. It just did not work. I suffered through a lot. Knowing the fact that this police officer has lied on me and knowing the fact that he's admitted it, not just admitted it, but admitted it in an open court to where he was convicted. He's a convicted felon. So, it's hurtful.
I want you to tell us about your organization, the Chandler Project.
Yes. I founded the Chandler Project a couple of years ago. And the biggest and main reason is because I'm an exoneree. I understand fully and firsthand what it's like to be released from prison, first and foremost, and then have nothing. And then to have to go through so much turmoil to try and get compensation. Uh, it took a very long time before anything really happened in that regard for me. And even after I was exonerated, those charges were still on my record. And so it was so difficult for me to still get a job. I put in hundreds of applications, hundreds of interviews, and they all ended the same way. Mr. Chandler, we understand your situation, and we're so sorry that we can't hire you because you're a convicted felon. Even
Even though
though I
you're
had,
exonerated,
even though I had, even though I had been exonerated in the court system,
wow.
because the charges remained on my record. Listen, I've had my attorneys expunge my record several times, okay? Not just once or twice, more than that, several times. And every single time that they do it, it seems like another part of the system jumps up and recognizes these old charges. So, and I'm sorry, I really want to tell you a story that because it relates directly to that. So, I got tired of living in Louisville. I wanted to move. I wanted to change. Didn't want my family to have to suffer, going through the same stuff that I'm going through, seeing it. So I moved to Atlanta, moved to Georgia. And when I moved here, me and my wife filed for a gun license. Mm-hmm. And they denied me my gun license here because of those charges. And I've had those charges expunged 4 or 5 times. And even after I moved away from there, those charges still popped up in the system here, and they denied me my gun license. And I had to have my attorney go back and expunge my record forward into Georgia so that I could obtain my gun license. And even after that, I was stopped by the police one day, and the police here treated me bad. Simply because in my record now here, it shows like it's blacked out. And so the police know that something happened. And in that regard, now they're upset because they can't see what did happen. And now they think that I'm even more of a criminal. It's crazy. I don't understand the system. And I don't understand how these things work. I moved away from Louisville 8 years ago to try to get away from this. And I still deal with this. It just has never went away. And I don't know why. So now I'm dealing with the Chandler Project. I have resources, and I have people who's helping me, and I have avenues to travel to try and make situations like that to where it don't happen like that anymore. I think me and others have had to be test subjects in this situation in order for us to see that there is a need for projects like this. I put a lot of pressure on my own attorneys to help me out when it's not their job to do that, to aftercare for me. They went to school to become lawyers, not social workers. And so in that regard, I just seen that it was a big need. And God's given me big and broad shoulders. He's always blessed me with a big heart to care for people. And it's not about me anymore in this situation. It's about other exonerees, people getting out today, that suffer and have the same background that I have. And I know what they're going to go through in their future. So I just felt like, you know what, if I don't see too many other people stepping up to the plate for this, so I'm going to do it myself. And so I founded the Chandler Project, and it helps exonerees re-enter back into society.
I want to encourage people, if you'd like to donate, go to thechandlerproject.us. That's the CHANDLER project.us, where you can donate there. Mr. Chandler, I want to thank you for sharing your story. You're currently 49 years old. You'll be 50 in August. And yes. I want to thank you. These stories are so important, and they can't be forgotten. And to your point earlier, Black men are 7 times more likely to be wrongfully convicted. That's a stat. That's a real stat. So I want to thank you for your work. Close us out, Mr. Chandler.
Really, I just want to thank you. I really want to thank you so much for putting me on your show, because this gives me another avenue to travel in for my message and what I'm serving the public, to try and be a better person, and showing my kids, that, like, we can do better as people, and we have to do better as people. We need to love on each other a little bit more, and we need to care about each other just a little bit more.